Hi, today I'm going to be showing you how you can paint mountains disappearing into the distance using a simple colour technique. It's a very lovely, easy technique to learn, and you won't require, it doesn't require, sorry, very many materials. You're just going to need a little selection of brushes, a pot of water, a few colours, not very many at all, just some white acrylic, some green acrylic and some blue acrylic, and a palette and a pencil. I'd recommend just using a 2B or a 3B pencil, nothing too dark. You don't want to have a lot of lead left on the pencil, left on the canvas, sorry, because it just can spoil the delicate technique as you come into the distance. So to get started, just start mapping in some mountains. You can do them however you like. You could do it from a picture of mountains or from your imagination, where you're just thinking, right, I'm going to just get some lovely uneven bumpy surface to just closely sort of suggest the mountain range. So you've got the top lines, you've got to just see that, and then you want to bring another one in. You can bring that however you want, starting as high as you want, but just thinking about having another mountain that just sits in front of that one. Remembering to keep that line lovely and bumpy, really uneven, so it has that rugged mountain edge. And then line here, I'm just wiggling it around. You can do it however you want, nice and freely, just giving yourself the sense of rolling mountain tops, going right back. And the technique we're going to use with colour will really create that lovely sense of depth. So have a mountain in the foreground here. Another one if you wanted, coming across here. It's really up to you how big you want to make these ones in the foreground, but you can see how it's quite nice to have a bit of fun with them and just pop them in however you want. So we're going to use just blues and greens to have a green mountain at the front with blue sky, and I'm going to teach you how you can combine those colours to create depth. The same theory would apply if you wanted to have all blue mountains, or if you wanted to have a pink sky or a sunset and apply that. So it's going to be the same technique regardless of whatever colour you use. So to get started, we're going to just add a little bit of blue and white to our palette. So you want to make sure you've got a nice amount of blue out on your palette, a nice amount of white, and down here we're going to have a little bit of green. So we're just setting up our palette like that. And then to get started first, we're going to use a larger brush to get the job done quickly and wash in a lovely light blue sky. So taking lots of white, pop it down on the palette, wash your brush in the water, wipe it on the side of the pot so you don't totally soak the paint. Take a little bit of blue and mix that in just to make a really lovely pale blue sky. Right, and then we're going to glide that in. Use a little bit of water as well with the acrylic paint, just to help it glide. You should find with a nice big brush that's quite effortless and easy, you can just scoop up that paint and glide it on. You want to fill the whole area of the sky. Just painting that in. Backwards and forward strokes, or just rough scumbling is fine. It doesn't actually matter if you have a flat, smooth sky or a textured sky. The main thing is that it's quite light in tone. Painting it all across here. Right, I'm going to come right up to the mountain. Try and follow that line. If you just slow down as you do that and bring your brush right up to the edge. And do your best to just follow that line, just wiggling along. Just by applying a little bit more pressure to the brush at that point, it helps you to control it. So you can just apply a little bit more pressure onto the canvas. And just swishing in and out. Taking that nice blue. If you find you're running out, just make up a little bit more. Just a nice amount of white. You're going to need quite a lot of this sky colour, so I'd be quite generous actually with your initial making of it. So I've popped some white there. I'm just going to wash my brush again because it's a good idea to keep the brush really clean when you're scooping up colour from the palette. And then a very small amount of that blue mixed in. You can just mix it with your brush at this stage. And then glide that back in there. If you want to have your sky just having a little bit more going on, then feel free to just scoop up a little bit of the white and just streak a few lighter bits across it. It's important if you're going to do that, that you've done it reasonably quickly so that all of that blue is still wet and the paint just disappears into it. You don't really want to necessarily have too bold a cloud shape coming across because we want this sky to look like it's really going off into the distance, this view. Right, okay, so that's lovely. Once you've got that, you want to give your brush a good wash again. And then we want to come down to some green. You can choose just a straight green from your green if you want, or you could add a little bit of blue to it. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to it just because I want the mountain that's in the foreground to be quite dark. So I'm going to scoop up some of that same blue that I was just using and mix that into my green. And it's just allowing that green to go nice and dark and rich. And I'm going to start painting that over. Go a little bit bluer if you want, or you can keep it really green. And then you just want to paint that all in. Now this is up to you if you want to leave the brush strokes where you can see them, as you're stroking your paint down, or if you want to just glide it on thin and smooth, then just stroke it backwards and forwards like that, gliding your colour on, using a little bit of water to help it flow. If you quite like to see the brush strokes in the foreground, just paint it on like that without worrying about blending it. Let it be a little bit more sort of interesting, I suppose. So then we're taking our brush into the water, giving it a good wash. Just making up a little bit more by adding the same amount of blue to that green again. Just making sure I've got a nice, rich, saturated colour. So the painting, the mountains that are right in the foreground of the painting need to be rich and strong in colour. So lovely, bold, rich, bluey green, or a dark blue you could use, or just a dark green. It really is entirely up to your personal preference there. You can have fun with this technique and try doing it in all different colours. I just want to show you how to create distance. Here, following the line that we've just mapped in with our pencil. Just overlap that pencil line slightly just to get rid of the pencil line, because at the end of the painting we don't really want to see loads of pencil lines. We want to just see paint, so it's quite good if you can just pop your paint just over the top. Acrylic paint's generally pretty good actually at covering, as long as you don't have really heavy pencil lines going on. Right, so when that's all done, you've come right to the bottom, you've got a lovely rich colour, quite richly applied and quite dark. You can then come back up to this top mountain. So we're going to wash our brush again. There's a lot of brush washing required. And then we're going to come back to that sky colour, take just a little bit of it to one side, or you can go straight into it. It's up to you, however you prefer to work. But what the main thing is that we're going to take just a tiny little bit of this colour that we popped into this foreground mountain and mix it into the sky colour. So we're just changing that sky colour just slightly. And what we're doing is creating a mountain in the distance that contains some of that green that we're using for our mountains, but it's heavily diluted with sky colour. Basically to take all the saturation out of the colour and totally dilute it. Because as things become further away, off into the distance, we see a lack of saturation, a lack of focus, and the colour is muted and it becomes really quite diluted with the sky colour if you're looking at the landscape. So just check it's not exactly the same colour as the sky. Put a little dab down and check. I can see that's a bit too similar, so I'm going to just wash my brush again and scoop up some of that green. So just wash it and wipe it on the side of the pot or on a rag so you're not making the paint too watery. And then scoop up a bit more of that just to make sure you have actually changed the colour enough for it to look different, but only slightly. Do a little test again. That's there. Still quite similar. I'm going to put a little bit more in. I might just have to get a little bit more green actually onto my palette. So I'm going to put a bit more green out and add a little bit more blue to it, just to make that same green that I used for the mountain. Make sure I've got plenty of that. You need to have plenty of sky colour and plenty of mountain colour on your palette. And that's all mixed in. You can then take just a tiny bit at a time. Maybe pop a bit next to it so you can go back and forth without washing the brush. And then just check again. You can see now that that's getting quite a bit greener. It's got that nice softness to it that I'm after. So I'm going to go for it. If you feel happier switching to a slightly smaller brush at this stage, then do. The big brushes are great for that first mountain in the sky. You might just want just a slightly smaller brush just to get into these areas just a little bit more easily. And then start to paint your first mountain in. So this one is going to look very similar to the sky colour. It's just disappearing right into the distance. I'm going to bring my colour right up to that pencil line and try and get rid of it. And then bring that very subtly different colour into that first mountain. You can see it's just that little bit greener. Just bring it right up. You can wiggle your brush in like this to control it or put it flat and do little strokes. Just see what feels easiest as you're doing it. And remember, if you go over the line a little bit, it doesn't matter because it's an organic structure that you may well just be making up here to get this technique. So it doesn't really matter as long as you keep to that sort of uneven line, then it's fine because obviously your mountains are different. Right, just make sure you can see it there. It's disappearing a little bit too much into the sky. Add a tiny bit more sky colour. Sorry, a tiny bit more mountain colour. Just to make that a little bolder. And then come down here, up to that first line of the second mountain. Good, and then that way, so you just have to move your brush around to make it easier to get into all these bumps. You sometimes have to go up that way to get down into that line easily. Sometimes you just need to dab it, sometimes you need to bring it to the side. And you're just trying to paint it in quite smoothly at this stage. It wants to have a lovely flat surface as it disappears into the distance, because you wouldn't get to see the texture of the mountain if it was really far away, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Just make sure it's not too dark there. Right, so that first mountain is just super subtle. You can only just see it in terms of its difference to the sky colour. When you have all the other mountains in, it's going to look great because you're going to start to go darker and darker. That first one, when you've got that, you then want to come down to the next one. And we're going to wash our brush to do that. And to achieve that with the next one, we're going to be using our original green. So make sure we've got lots of that. So a nice amount of that lovely dark green that we had in the front. So if you're running low, just make up some more. And then we're going to take a little bit more of that and add it into the next mountain. So this time we've got just a little bit less sky colour and a little bit more mountain colour coming in. So you can just mix that into the same area that you were mixing your colour, which is quite a good way to work with acrylics because it does dry quickly. It's quite good to keep that paint moving, stop it from drying. And then you want to do another little test. You do want to see a difference between the mountains, but it does need to be subtle again. So don't go too heavy with how much you're putting in. Just a nice amount, but still on the side of really pale. Okay, and then do a little bit and check that you can see the difference. Just wiggling my brush around to keep that lovely uneven surface. Find that quite a good way to go in, like that, flat, with a flat brush. It's actually less fiddly than coming along the line with a pointed brush. But you're best off really playing around with different brushes and seeing what you find suits the job and what seems to do the job most easily. Most painters have a few favourite brushes that they use a lot. And then you can see that mountain just sitting in front of that one. Just easing that colour up into there. I'm changing the direction of my brush again, just to make it easier to get into the little nooks and crannies. And along that line. If the paint's not gliding, if you're picking it up and it's not moving anywhere, just get a little bit of water on the brush, just to allow that kind of ease of application. It shouldn't take a really long time to get this colour on because it's really just a flat colour each time you do a mountain. It really should be reasonably quick as a technique. And then coming down here. And what's fun about this is you can have a go at doing it in the colours that I've shown you, first of all, and then you can play around with trying the same theory with different colours. So you could, like I said at the beginning, you could have all blue mountains and just go from that rich dark blue to it getting lighter and lighter and lighter as you get up into the sky. I do find it easier to start with the lights and work back down towards the first mountain, just because of the fact that each mountain is sitting in front. It allows you to get a really good crisp line along the edge of each mountain. And this could work really well with a pink sky as well. And you could put a blue mountain in the front, and then each time you were nearer, one in the distance, you'd have more of the pink added to the blue. You'd use a bit of white as well, just to make sure it's really, really light. As you come in, that can look super cool. Right, and then just take that right up to the edge. It's quite a good idea to just slightly overlap the edge of the canvas, just so that you don't have a little bit of the edge just left unpainted. And again, still working for quite a smooth, rich application. The colour's diluted, it's not saturated, it's diluted with sky colour, but the application still needs to be really quite smoothly applied. So just lots of stroking backwards and forwards and filling in all of the gaps, making sure you've got a really lovely, rich, smooth surface. Okay, when you've done that one, you can then have a good wash of the brush again. Make sure you've got enough sky colour. I'm kind of running out now, so I'm just going to make some more. So I'm just going to use that blue and white that I've got here. Make sure I've got enough white. Wash my brush. Take a little bit of blue. Make up a bit of this, that original sky colour. I need a little bit more white. Just a little check. Yeah, that's great. And then make sure you've got lots of that original mountain colour, which I have. I've got quite a bit there. And then I can scoop some of that down into here. Just give my brush a wash because I don't want to transfer all of that sky colour into here. I want to try and keep that nice and dark. So I'm just leaving that there with a nice clean brush. I'm now scooping up some of that. And I'm going to put just a little bit extra in because obviously I want it to be darker still as we come down. So mixing that in. It's very similar to that mountain. So I need to make it a bit darker. You can also just use a little bit more blue if you want to. Because you've used blue in this colour, it will work great if you want to just add more blue at any point to make it darker. And it's also quite nice to just have a little bit of variation going on with a slightly bluer mountain. Just do a little check. Yeah, that's good. You can see the difference. I'm going to make this one just a little bit bluer. Make sure you use the same blue that you used in here, so you've got that lovely sense of colour change being really subtle. Sprinkling that in. If you want any little smooth bits of the mountain, then go for it. And then nice jagged at the top there. Try and really fill all the gaps so you don't have any white. You don't want to see any white canvas poking through. Just using the same technique to just wiggle that paint in. And then smoothing it out across the mountain. I really like that with a slightly bluer mountain just in there. Make sure you're happy with the shape. And at any point, if you make a mistake and you think, oh no, I've made that mountain go slightly too high or it's not where you want it, you can just leave it to dry a minute and paint the other colour over the top really easily with acrylic. So you can really control what's happening nice and easily. It dries so quickly and it's so easy to paint over the top of it. It's a lovely realisation about painting. Especially with acrylics, it's just great for that because you don't have to wait for any amount of time. It's dry within 5 minutes and then you can just go, all right, I'll just paint that colour over the top. Right, I'm just going to bring that down right up to this mountain that I've mapped in. Remembering to cover the pencil lines, you really don't want to see them. There. and then after you've done that and you're happy with that colour, we want to see this one coming down here containing quite a lot of this colour. So we're really allowing the mountains to get darker. So just make sure, first of all, that you have plenty of that original green. So just squeezing out a nice amount. I've just got these little tubes in the Simply range. Just squeezing some of that out, and then a little bit more blue. Make up lots of that lovely original colour, which is why it's really good to keep all that light paint out of this part of the palette. Hence all of the brush washing, just because we really need to keep this section of the palette that lovely rich dark green. Right, and then when you have that, take a nice amount of that on the brush, so no need to wash the brush now, just scoop up the paint and pop it into here and give that a good mix with what's left. If you run low of sky colour, scoop up some sky colour and pop that in. You want to see it not as dark as this, but nicely darker than the one in front. So that's great, what I've got there. I'm really happy with that, so I'm just going to get that on. You can see that subtle change in tone with lots more of that green coming in. Right up to your mountain. And then if you find when you come to this first mountain that you mess up the line a little bit, you can always paint some of that original green at the end just over the top of here. So don't worry about it, just get it in there for now. Just coming right up over that pencil line carefully, right up to the edge of the canvas so it has that lovely finished look to it when it's done. And a little bit of water. I need to get just a bit more actually. So I'm going to come and scoop up lots of that lovely dark, pop it there, wash my brush, wipe my brush on the pot, scoop up a little tiny bit of sky colour, not too much. Mix that up, and then carry on. It becomes really quite hard to make the paint travel if you don't have enough paint, so you do need to just keep an eye on how much of the mountain colour and sky colour you have to hand. If it's completely running out, you're going to make it really hard for yourself to get that lovely rich application of paint that you're seeking. Go smoothing that on again. It's lovely for the surface of your painting to have a really lovely rich quality, so it's quite good to just concentrate on trying to smooth that paint on. Right up over the pencil. Add a little bit more of a bump there. I love the way you can have all these gorgeous little dips and rises. It's so fun and really quite lovely to do from your imagination. You don't have to do it from a picture. You can just have your mountains however you want them to be. They could start up coming right up diagonally. You could have some really big ones, some small thin ones. You can just have a lot of fun with it and allow yourself the freedom to create that composition that you really want to have in your piece. If you need inspiration, you can find a wealth of gorgeous images of mountains. Bring it into here. And again, making sure you finish that whole mountain right up to the edge of the canvas. It's really good to do the edges as you go, just to save you at the end thinking, oh, I wish I'd just painted that tiny little bit in there. Otherwise you have to make up the same colour again. So just try and give it that attention to detail and time needed just in the first place. Make sure it's lovely and rich. Okay, and then make sure you're happy with that colour. And then in here, I'm going to go quite dark actually, just because I think the painting could do with just a little bit more of a deeper colour. So I'm going to scoop up quite a lot of blue and mix it into here and make a really lovely bluey dark mountain in there. Just in the foreground, just to add a little bit more in terms of contrast to the painting. And it's always quite good as well, the things that are really close up to you in a landscape painting to be a little bit darker, because things as they go further away get paler and paler, and it just adds to that sense of distance to have something in the foreground that is actually really quite dark. So I definitely have the first two mountains really dark. And the combination of blue and green is just so lovely together and harmonious, that it's quite nice to get a bit of blue down into these mountain colours as well. Just bring that across. And I've managed to do the whole thing with just this brush, but if you need to pick up a smaller brush, just to get into little fiddly bits, then just use the brushes as you need. And then if you want to see just a few more brush strokes shown as you get to these mountains in the front, a few more marks or textured bumps, then just go for it, because that will add again to the sense of distance, because things in the foreground obviously show more detail than things off in the distance. So if you've got a little bit of texture and ridginess to your mountains down here, then that's quite good. And when I say that, I mean just by scooping up quite a lot of paint and just stroking it in, just placing it down rather than blending it. So just being a little bit more flamboyant, basically. There's all kinds of exciting ways of creating texture. You can use palette knives, you can use texture paste, which you can paint on first. This is a really nice texture paste that you can use, where you just paint that on underneath, leave it to dry, and then paint it on. So you can always do that to these front mountains if you want to. Or you can just paint them lovely and smooth and rich, but just make sure that these mountains in the foreground are darker and richer in colour. So you're not adding sky colour to them, you're not diluting it with sky colour. It's just a purer mix of colour. I quite like it, just painted flat and smooth actually. And then just to finish off, I'm just going to make sure I've got enough of that original green just coming along this mountain. So it's just that green going in and just finishing off that blue I've got here, mixing that in. And then just making sure I'm happy with the edge of my mountain. Yeah, because I did it first, it was a little tricky to cut that right in. And it's also quite a nice idea to give the front mountain a second coat, just because, again, we're trying to achieve a real sense of rich saturation. So to do another layer is only going to add to that. Just make sure it's nice and green. We don't want to have too many blues or sort of being too similar. So that lovely original deep green mountain colour that I made. Oh, it's a little bit too blue, so just get a little bit more green. Squeeze that out. There we go, and just paint that over here. And just make sure that pencil's covered. Just lets the painting down a little bit to be able to see all the pencil marks. It's really quite good to just get that paint over the top of them. And then have a bit of fun with this mountain in the front, because like I said, it's great to have a little bit more going on. So if you want to have a few sort of streaks of bluey green or green, then just go for it. Okay. And then we have a really nice, simple way of creating distance. You can see this mountain looks really quite far away compared to these. And you're just getting that lovely sense of depth by doing that simple technique of just adding the sky color each time. So each mountain just has a little bit more sky color than the one before. And the one in the front is just rich and saturated. I hope you found that interesting and easy to follow. Thanks ever so much for watching. Bye.